and heat.
Tuesday and Wednesday. Actually, when Dennis came, this was his first day. And Wednesday he was starting to come out of it, and Thursday, and the next 5 days, which is wonderful.
Really? It's good, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Completely lucid. And wonderful.
My gosh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's post-operatively so many things when you're severely
well, I think
compromised.
there's a lot more to it than that, which I really feel very compelled to talk about. Because I came in yesterday to, not yesterday, day before, to talk to Dr. Goldberg about it.
I'm actually going to ask you to change microphones.
Allison, so it's like coffee stains on the carpet or something, stay there forever and ever.
Yeah. I had a couch like this in Dallas, and that's why I vowed never to get one like this again, where the pillows are completely separate. Like, because this is what happens: is they slide.
Yes,
get
they really
clenched,
do.
and-
We haven't talked for a long time, and I think just to sort of like fill me in, since I know externally what has happened, obviously, since we talked, but I haven't heard from you. And as you've already hinted, there's some things you'd like to say. But before we get that far, maybe it'd be good to know where we've gone since the last taping, how your life has progressed, what happened to Ed, to his care, to you.
I guess, what was the last taping?
Last taping was, and perhaps just before the end of April.
Well, except for when Dennis came out
Dennis
for
was on there.
the birthday party, which was...
And then the filming actually in Boston. There was some filming there.
There was?
Wasn't there?
No.
Oh, there wasn't. They just showed
I
the
don't
tape.
think Dennis filmed, did he?
Sure I did.
You did?
Yeah.
I have some tape with me.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I haven't seen much of it. And I wanted to take a look at it, but just haven't.
So that was in, I think the thing in Boston was probably in May. And when was the birthday party?
It was in May, in June. Yeah.
I think I shortly there.
Huh?
And I haven't seen you since then.
He actually was doing fairly well. It was some good, comfortable time, even up till about 6 weeks ago. He was never gaining any weight, and they couldn't understand that. And I'm right now starting to go through a little bit of anger period and bitterness, so I about that. But the only thing was that he wasn't gaining weight, and we were just working madly at that and trying to. But he was having some pretty good time.
Was he losing weight?
No.
Or was stabilized?
He was stabilized only because he ate like a frigging pig, and which any normal person would have gained hundreds of pounds from what Edward ate. But then about 6 weeks ago, he got some sudden pain. No, he started. He started feeling nauseous one night, and started throwing up and threw up all night long, and went into the hospital the next day, and they ran all the tests, and he was in the hospital for about a week, and they just decided it was a virus probably, and complicated by the fact that once he started throwing up, he wasn't being able to keep his pain medication down, so he was starting to go through withdrawal, which made him keep throwing up and whatever, which all turns out, of course, to be a bunch of bullshit, because he had a complete obstruction was forming, and his bowels were completely, almost by that point even, what's the word, necrotic? But it was just a virus. So, and they were not making him comfortable at all in the hospital and giving him a completely horrible time again because they were not continuing to consult with Dr. Goldberg like I asked. And for the first time in the whole year and a half, Ed really went through, I've never seen him so bitter and so angry. And now I'm really bitter and angry knowing there was no reason. He shouldn't have been like that. There was no reason that should have been. That whole incident in the hospital happened that week. That was 5 weeks ago. And then he came home, and he was, in the first week already, he had gotten down to like 102 pounds, and he got back up to 109, gained some of it back, and he was okay. Very, very weak, but much better outside of the hospital at home that next week. And the second week was okay, and then the third week he thought he was feeling better one day, and then that was a Thursday. He had an appointment, in fact, with Dr. Goldberg, and he was feeling better that morning, started to get really cleaned up and get ready to go, and he just suddenly said the pain was just too much, and so didn't go. Instead, just called Dr. Goldberg, and then had a bad night, and the next morning he was just in so much pain that called Dr. Wyman, and he had a room ready, and we took him in. And they were running all the tests and finally going to do a CAT scan, again, to figure out what it was. And also called in his surgeon, Dr. Liffman, to try and consult, and Dr. Liffman came on Saturday, and they just kept doing x-rays constantly because they still didn't, it looked like there was maybe an obstruction, but they weren't that sure. And by Sunday night, I had already gone home. It was like 10:30 at night. Dr. Liffman had come back, and the x-rays they had taken Sunday night definitely showed there was a blockage. So Dr. Liffman actually wanted to do the surgery then, wanted to go in, and Ed said he just would rather wait until he saw me in the morning. And so Monday afternoon, he went in to operate and take out this obstruction, and barely went in and said it's just too bad, he couldn't even begin.
How was Ed before the operation?
Very, very bad off. I've never seen him in so much pain, ever. Not after the surgery, not even the hours, but a couple of hours before he died, he wasn't as in much pain as he was when he went in that Friday.
You're really angry.
I am very angry.
What are you most angry about, do you feel?
That he suffered for no reason. Emotional anguish. Not two things I'm angry about. The time wasted before they finally sent him to Dr. Goldberg. There was at least 2 months from the first time I ever heard Dr. Goldberg's name mentioned, and when they finally referred him. And they finally referred him because they honestly decided he was a basket case. It was totally psychological and psychiatric that he was not dealing with, not being able to get pain relief. And so, of course, then finally, that's why they sent him to Dr. Goldberg, who proceeded to say he didn't see that the case at all, instead just worked on his medication. And the only quality time that Ed has had in the last 6 months since he met Dr. Goldberg has been due strictly to that one man. No one else. You know, sure, they've been kind for the most part. They cared. I really thought before, I'm always going to be, in the end, I'm really going to go to Dr. Wyman and to all the nurses and say thank you. Oh, and thank them because they've been so kind and caring and they tried so hard. And in the end, the patient died, so what did they really do? They cared. Okay, they were kind for the most part, and they cared. They didn't try anything. They didn't do anything. They actually stood in the way of making him comfortable. It's not anger or bitterness that they didn't find a cure. They didn't cure him. But damn it, sometimes they actually kept him from being comfortable. And that last stay in the hospital before the one when he died, that's all he said. All I'm asking is for you to make me comfortable. Help me, and they He had to go home and go back to consulting with Dr. Goldberg to be comfortable.
Why do you think people don't respond, or why didn't
They're
they?
so damn uneducated, I can't stand it. I'm really angry about that. I'm angry that Dr. Goldberg or someone that does the kind of work he's doing is not more promoted. People aren't more educated, that there is someone there that exists that can help. That's a damn fine, supposedly, oncology team over there. Why didn't they know about him? Why aren't they I'm sure Ed is not that much of an isolated case. I know not. I've had people say they've had situations where they've had a family member, someone who has suffered so much, had so much pain, and I just don't think for the most part they don't have to have that kind of pain. They don't have to suffer. Knowing, when I asked, just the whole time knowing that in this whole last 10 months since his last surgery, so much of the scratching of the head and trying to figure out what in the world is wrong with him. And when I asked that surgeon when he walked in that Monday after going in and seeing how incredibly bad it was and he couldn't operate, and I asked him, what do you think has caused so much pain all this time since last surgery? He looked at me almost dumbfounded, like, how can you ask such a... He said, the cancer. My God. That makes me angry. It's not so much that they didn't know that. Okay, maybe the cancer was forming in such a way that they really couldn't see it, and the tests, yes, the tests were turning up negative. I don't blame them for that, but I do blame them for not assuming. At least Dr. Goldberg assumed it was the cancer, assumed it was something clinical, and went from there. They got to the point where just because their tests, what tests they had, were turning up negative, assumed it was not the cancer, and then turned it into a guilt trip on Edward.
So you feel they weren't listening to the patient?
Oh, absolutely not.
They were relying on
listening,
tests.
but not really hearing. Yes, listening. He's got pain, and but it's not. It's his problem. He's got a problem that he's got pain because.
So it became a patient's problem rather than...
Yeah. I told Dr. Goldberg, it's a catch. I am so grateful to that man, mainly because not only of the last 6 months, but especially for what he did for us. He gave us the gift of the last 5 days of his life. That man, single-handedly. And on one hand, I am so grateful, and I feel so blessed, and it was so incredibly lucky. And on the other hand, I get so angry, because now I know it almost wasn't. Had Dr. Goldberg not come in, done what he did, which was come in the day after his surgery that Tuesday, and go over all his charts, and make all these adjustments, changing. Ed was completely delirious and hallucinating and everything. And they just all accepted that. They just accepted it's the after effects of surgery and anesthesia and all of that, along with the medications, but he may get better, he may not. Dr. Goldberg didn't just say he may or may not. Yes, those were the reasons, but he's saying also he has lost so incredibly much weight. He has been going through that's another thing. He went in and they started giving him 150 milligrams every 3 hours of, 1,500, Demerol, that's...
150?
150, thank you. Every 3 hours, or as needed. Well, then they got to as needed, whenever he asked for it. He stopped asking for it. He got so delirious. Well, so they stopped giving it to him. Well, the one doctor there, I had a concern right before he went into surgery. He was having trouble breathing. He was sweating profusely. He was nauseous. Something wasn't right. And I said, First of all, when was the last time anyone gave him some drugs? Well, he hadn't been asking for it, so they weren't giving it to him, and hadn't given it to him in a good 8 hours. Well, doctors, I said, could he possibly be going through some withdrawal here? Well, a person can go 24 hours without getting it. So I said, okay, if I'm off the wall about that, then what is it? And nothing was ever done, and he went to surgery. But Dr. Goldberg says, well, that's a nice generalization, but in this case, you're looking at someone who has lost so incredibly much weight. His chemical imbalances are off the wall. Yeah, going just 8 hours, he said, and it wasn't just 8 hours. He took the chart and he looked at it and found out that 3 days previous to the day of surgery, the day before surgery, he'd had 150 whatever every 3 hours, and then that day before he had exactly half that for the whole 24-hour period. And he said, yes, he was going through withdrawal. There's just no excuse for that kind of thing. So that couple going through withdrawal, then going through surgery, then going through with anesthesia, he came out, he was a mess. Well, Dr. Goldberg came in, first of all, made the decision, take him off the Demerol, put him on morphine, less side effects of hallucinating. At least get him on oxygen, anything, extra oxygen in the brain can help. Giving me ideas of what I can do when he does fade in and out. When he does fade in, do things to try and help orient him, get him back. Then adding Haldol to try another drug to add for tranquilizing and counteracting the hallucinating. All these things. Within 2 days, Edward was clear as a bell. Absolutely comfortable and clear up until 4 hours before he died. And even up until 30 minutes before, clear, but in pain, tremendous pain. I am so grateful and so thrilled about that, but I am so angry knowing the others wouldn't have done a damn thing. They wouldn't have made any of those decisions, and the last 7 days of his life would have been nothing. And instead, I'm really angry about that. Just because they're so uneducated, and why isn't somebody out there educating them? Damn it, they knew they were going to lose the patient, so learn to do something about it, helping what time is there to help them make it comfortable and make it quality, what quality you can get out of it. Give them something. And we got the gift of being able to say everything, to put everything in order, say everything two people could want to say to each other, really, really say goodbye. And I almost didn't have that. And I'm angry about that.
What did you talk about that you wouldn't have been able to talk about had he maintained a confusional state from?
Oh, well, Ed completely, within those 5 days, completely went through all the transition of realizing he wasn't going home. This was the time he was going to die. Helping me, saying everything to help me make all the decisions to get all the financial things in order. He planned his own services. He said things about what he wanted done about certain things. All those kinds of things. Which sure are just nice to haves, but damn nice to haves when it's the last thing you get. And just being able to tell me how much he loved me, and for me to be able to tell him, and for us to talk about my life after him, our life, how it had been, just to talk. We weren't able to talk that first day or two after surgery. He was completely incoherent, making no sense at all when he did talk.
Some need people at some time and space at another time. I think, most people are somewhere in between. Sometimes one needs space to assimilate, when there's a lot of din, people talking, and that you can't, as you say, you can't let the reality sink in. It's like a party, and then yet at another time you need to know that people are around and and can do things, and that life goes on.
Yes, well,
Did it happen like you thought it would? You know, looking back now, is it?
Not at all. I mean, that's the only part that I'm having a hard time dealing with. I had it all played out in my head that the main thing was all along over the last 6 months, there would be times I'd ask Dr. Wyman, well, are you going to give us some kind of sign? What are the things we should be looking for so that we know when it's going to get back? We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. You'll have months to talk about that. What happened to the months? On a Monday, the surgeon walks in and says, if I could say days, it would be weeks. I could say weeks, it would be days. That's a shock because I had it all played out in my head that the minute we understood that it was getting bad, I thought we'd at minimum have 2 months. I don't know, that number was in my head. And I would then start going back to the counselor and really starting to try and prepare. And Ed and I would do all sorts of things to deal and prepare, probably just an extended version of those last 5 days. Didn't get any of that. And then also, all of us, I still have a lot I haven't really processed that morning, that day, because it was all so fast. And it wasn't supposed to be that fast. Only several hours. What happened in several hours? I walked in there, apparently just, it took me about a half hour, 40 minutes to get there when his mother called me. And in that time, they said he was just smoking cigarettes and drinking water, maintaining control and alertness. So no one thought it was that bad. No one thought he was that bad. I walked in, and I don't know what the hell was going on. Where were the nurses and doctors? And I don't know, the one time since I've seen the counselor, she said even the nurses and doctors just often at times like that kind of go through a denial process, that not really recognizing it for what it's worth, because for what it really is. When I walked in and I sat down and touched his hand, he was sweating all down his arms, and he was ice cold. I mean, it was ice. His hands and arms were ice, so cold I couldn't touch them. That cold. It seems like that should have been assigned to medical people. It was strange to me. Anyway, and when he talked to me for about 5 minutes, then he asked me to send his sister in, and then he asked one at a time, his sister, his mother, and my brother, and then for me to come back in. And that's when he really said, with such fervor and such conviction, that it's now, I'm going now, and he started asking the Lord to please take him. And that was disturbing because he'd always wanted it to be so peaceful. He kept saying, I hope I just fall asleep and don't wake up, which is everyone's dream. But instead, he said, I'm going now. I've got to go. I've got to go now. I'm going now. Please, please take me now. So anxious and with such a fervor that I asked him, sweetheart, do you want me to see if they can give you something to make you a little more comfortable? I thought, this is going to go on for hours, honey. You don't just go this fast. And he's acting like I want to go now. You don't do that. And all of a sudden, I mean, that's when he turned his head kind of just away from me, and he started breathing so heavily. A nurse came in, and I said, for God's sakes, is someone going to monitor this with me? And she finally went out and got the head nurse, who came back in. And at that point, I did walk down the hall to get his mother and sister and said, if you want to come back in, I don't know if you want to be in there, but if you want to. And they said, they thought I was just coming to say that, oh, well, if you'd like to sit with us for the next few hours or half a day or whatever, you can come in. And they walked in and were shocked what was going on, but the head nurse came in and just immediately picked up his arm, and she was the only one. And maybe, I don't know, she's a nun, maybe that makes a difference. I mean, she was dealing with it, and she said, he's going, it won't be long. Anyway, but before that, this other nurse came in, and I said, is Dr. Wyman around? Is he coming? Well, we've called the officer in charge. I kept saying the officer in charge. I didn't know what the hell the officer in charge is. And I said, who? And so finally she said, who? And I said, let's see him. Where's Dr. Wyman? So finally this doctor came in and called Dr. Wyman. Dr. Wyman didn't even get up there in time. So the doctor had to, and he was, poor thing, it's a new resident, and he'd been on its case the whole time, but it was probably the first time he's had to do that. And he just had, bless his heart, he just really could not grasp what was going on and what was happening so very fast, because he was trying to call him and talk to him, and by that point Ed was not responding and wasn't there, and afterwards, when Ed finally stopped breathing, he did his breathing and then stop for a few seconds, whatever, and then start again and stop, and then finally when he stopped altogether, I don't think the doctor was in the room at that second, and he'd gone out to call Dr. Wyman, and I asked everyone to leave. I just wanted to be alone with him. And then I was just there a few minutes, and then he came back in with the sister, and he was trying to find a pulse, and bless his heart, I mean, he was trying desperately to find a pulse everywhere on that body he could to find. And I was just kind of looking at him like I didn't understand why he was doing that and what he was doing. He finally looked up at the nurse across the bed from the sister and said, I can't find a pulse. He was so stunned and so shocked, and when he turned and looked at me and said, your husband's dead. I just looked at him, and it was almost like, no kidding, he was a couple minutes ago. I don't mean to be so irreverent right now, but it was really rather pathetic.
Do you have any regrets? Anything you wish you would have done that you didn't do?
I sure would have if we hadn't had those 5 days. But that night, that Tuesday night, I lay in bed, and I lay there for a good hour, trying desperately to think of anything I had regrets about. Anything that I hadn't said, and I couldn't think of one. But now there's starting to be little things, and I think those are always going to happen. Little times when, the burden of it all got too much, and I flew off the handle about something nothing and took it out on him and got angry, and how patient and sweet and kind he always was to me. And I think that's very natural, and I'm always going to have those kind of feelings of feeling guilty that I can't believe I yelled at him about that. That was so stupid. And in fact, we had thank God we had those 5 days, because I had one of those moments. When we moved into our house, he wanted to buy a lawn tractor. And I said, oh, how stupid. You don't need a lawn tractor. We don't have that much land, really. I mean, I'll help you mow it. That's silly. So then when he really was getting ill in the last 2 months, and I was out there mowing, that half acre, 3/4 acres of lawn. I finally went in one day, and I was sitting down out there just dying of heat stroke, and he came out and I said, "We are going to buy a lawn tractor." So we went, and he got to ride it that next weekend, and that was the last weekend before he went into the hospital. The 3 weeks before the last day. And at one point when he was on the tractor, I got angry with him, and I said something about, because the way he was mowing, and I yelled at him about it, and so he got off, and he went upstairs, and we had a huge fight. And my brother ended up mowing almost the rest of the lawn, and then I told my brother to get off, and Ed was coming back down to do it, and so Ed came back, and he had so much fun on that thing. And I remember that Wednesday night, I was just crying. I started thinking about that moment. I was so upset with myself that I had gotten so angry at him, and that was the one thing he enjoyed doing. And first of all, that I had deprived him for so long of having that toy for no reason, and that he only got to ride it once, and I was so upset about it. And I got to go in the next day, and he was okay, and it was the start of his really good time. And I got to ask him, I was thinking about last weekend, and even though we'd long made up, I just had to ask him again about it and said, "Are you still angry with me?" And he just reassured me that he wasn't, and that was silly, and it was fun, and he enjoyed it, and it was all okay. And I'm lucky in that way. I know that, because I know people don't have that, and everyone, when they lose someone, go through that period of a lot of the regrets and the guilt, and why didn't I say this, and oh, why did I do that, and I got the chance to go over them with them and really make sure it was all okay. But I'm still, in fact, just about that silly lawn tractor, it's the one thing, damn it, why didn't I let him get it a year ago? Why did I act like that? It wasn't, we could afford it. It wasn't that we couldn't. I just thought it was a silly, frivolous extra, and everyone would think, what is their problem?
Where do you see yourself going from now? How do you see the next year?
It's the most important thing to me is to stay in our house. I need to be there. I just kept telling him in the last 5 days that the most important thing to me was to make him proud of me. And that's what I really wanted to do in the next, after he was gone, especially in the next year or so, to be okay. Because and that's what drives me and going to make me okay, is everything he went through, if he can see me and he can be with me, he doesn't need the heartache of me not being okay. The heartbreak of that, because that was the most important thing to him, that I'd be okay. And I want to do all the things that he, in that house, that he liked having done and that he liked and he wanted to do, I want to do them. It's just really important to me. And I think that's all I'm doing, is planning for about the next year. And then I may change. I may move and go on.
Do you see any psychological time that would be right for you when you feel you would date again, or do you feel that's something you just can't think about now, or that it's just going to happen and it'll feel right at the time?
As a matter of fact, I was just talking to my dearest friend in California the other night on the phone, and I said that something that really hit me Sunday night is I realized I don't want to be alone. I want to share my life with someone. Ed and I talked about that, and, in fact, I kind of said, of course, the thing is, if he was going to go, damn it, where's the vice president that's supposed to step in? If I really think about it, I don't know. I know I can say I can. I'm saying I think I'm going to want someone else to be in my life. But I don't know if I'll ever find anyone that I'll accept. I pretty much accepted it. I will never find that kind of love again, and anything so perfect. And if I could just find someone that I'm comfortable enough with to share things with, that I do want that. I've already given thought to that, and he gave thought to it. He said I was the type that needed to be with someone and share things with someone. So I married for love that time, so married for money the next. And he said he better be damn rich. that have everything that we didn't have. So
You're 29 now?
Yeah.
Do you think it's harder to be 29 and a widow than to be 60 and a widow?
No. I think about that. Well, because my mother's 60. And she lost my father. Just that many years of an investment. You know, I can say that. I can say we had only 5 years, five very intense years, but only 5 years. However, I've had some kind of things people say. Could give you a lot on that, but I had one jerk say, of many things that this jerk said in his condolences, and I'm thinking he was saying all the right things and wonderful things, one of which was, well, and so how long were you married? And I said, well, married just a little over 2 years. And he said, oh, well, just 2 years. So that made it okay. Hey, you can just pick up and move right along. That's only 5 years out of your life. But for me, as far as comparing it to someone, it wouldn't be as hard as if I were 60. It's not as hard now. For me, I don't think. But ours is just such an unusual situation, an unusual case. I can say that because I feel like he prepared me so well for this. We had so much time to anticipate, and a lot of time for me to get used to the fact that I was going to have the rest of my life alone or without Ed. So having different times of giving a little bit of thought to what will I do in my life after, accepting that there will be a life after. If I were 60, I don't think I'd just automatically accept there will be a life after. I wouldn't. I wouldn't plan on it. I mean, I'd give up, I think, a lot. Just kind of give in. But with a lot of time to think about that. I can't with knowing it's probably a good 30, 40, 50 years left.
Will you maintain any relationship with Ed's son by his first marriage?
I think so. Ed would be so shocked at the conversations his ex-wife and I had in the last 2 weeks. I think so. I don't know. It's hard to say. You know, we've talked about it and we're going to shoot for that, but I think just more on a special occasion, his birthday basis and Christmas, and saving some of the things that Ed wanted him to have and sending them to him throughout the years. Many of them I've already given to his grandparents to give to him because if I'm not here, and if I move and go on to something else, then I'll give all those things to them. But it will probably always just remain in contact in some way. That was sweet. He called. The night after his mother told him, that night he wanted to talk to me, but it was like 1 in the morning, so the next morning he absolutely insisted he had to talk to me. So interesting what goes on in a 5-year-old's mind. He had to call me and ask me where was Daddy when he went to heaven? So I had to tell him that he was in the hospital, and they were trying to make him better and couldn't. And so that's where he was when he had to go. It's kind of interesting. But I think he's doing okay. He seems to really understand, though, too. His mother said that she's never seen him cry so hard, so desperately in his little life.
He wasn't at the funeral.
No. In fact, there's a question I need to ask someone who works with children. If we can bring him back. I mean, he really wants to come out, and we really want him to come out, but if that's healthy for him to come out now, or if it would not be healthy, I don't know, to come back to his daddy's house too soon, or I don't know. You don't have an opinion? It's not anyone's specific person, the fact that it was Dr. Goldberg, but
If we could just hold 1 second, because I'm sure we're going to have to...
I want to, something with your microphone here.
Oh.
What I'd like to do is I'd like to put it underneath
Oh, I see.
the headphones.
Is that all right while we're talking to you?
Yeah, hi.
Oh, I see.
That sometimes has this trick in which it goes through the sleeve
Well,
and out the...
Since were you able to, are you constrained by the cord, or are you able to get all those left? Okay,
What was your support during those final days after the surgery? What helped you get by? What gave you strength? What kept you able to give to Ed?
Ed?
Ed himself.
Oh, he was incredible. He moved into it slowly of really being able to deal with it and really talk to me. The first day, on Thursday, I asked him when he was ready, there were some things I'd like to talk about. So he moved into, he must have 3 times on Thursday very seriously told me about, I want you to, if you want to sell the truck. He went on and on about selling the truck, and who cares about it? But it was the first things, the first little step he could take into really getting into dealing with putting things in order. But over the next 4 or 5 days, he was, I didn't need anybody else. Because I stayed there constantly. And if he was sleepy, I just put my head on the pillow next to him and slept too. And if I wasn't there, I just was going to get something to eat or whatever. But him, the same one that's been my support through the whole thing.
Was it painful, though, at the same time to know that your strength was coming from something that was perishing, sort of like a person who's near a warm fire as it's about to go out and knowing that another fire is not to be immediately kindled?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Except that he was doing things so that even afterwards he'd be my strength. Saying things like, I'm going to always be with you. You're going to have some times when you're going to get so angry. Scream at me, talk to me and tell me and scream and yell at me and get mad at me. And then if you want to cry, go ahead, cry. It's telling me how to handle things, how to cope with things, what kinds of things could happen and might happen, and where to go and what to do, and asking friends to help me as far as business things to take care of. And
Do you feel he's here with us now?
no,
You don't have that sense of presence?
no. Only because I haven't really been able to accept that he's gone yet, that he's really gone, and that he's not coming back. And when I really accept that, then maybe I'm getting to that point. I've started kind of talking to him at home, but just in the last couple of days. Before that, not at all.
It's not real to you yet?
Mm-mm.
You feel it's like a bad dream?
No, honestly, what I'm feeling right now, and I don't know how long this will last, going through a lot of is such a sense of relief. It's like just being under a heavy weight for so long, and it comes off, and just feeling so light that you didn't realize that what that heavy weight was, that part of that heavy weight was something that was such a vital part of your life and protecting you, just the fact that it's off and you can lift your head again. I'm still going through that. And a lot of that is because of watching him die and the way he was. They think part of his intestines ruptured that night about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was staying there with him, and he was just in tremendous amount of pain, and they were raising the morphine, whatever, and I was just so incredibly tired. What I would do is I'd stay every night, and at 7 in the morning his mom would come in, and I'd go home and get cleaned up and even rest for a while and come back. But I was just so tired. I really, part of it was I think I didn't see quite how bad it was, but also he did hide it from me. I thought he was stabilized, and he asked me if my brother was out there waiting for me at 7 in the morning. His mom got there, and he said, then go ahead. And I asked him if he was sure, and I told him to be sure and have his mother just call me if he wanted me to come back. And I barely got home. Within the hour, she called me and said, he wants you to come back. He says he's ready to die.
He said that exactly, he's ready to die?
Yeah, that he said he's ready to die. And I had a little bit of trouble dealing with that, and I talked to his mother about this, and every single decision ever made in our whole relationship in 5 years we made together, about his treatments and everything, he always asked for my input. Every decision. And I think he just wanted me to leave long enough for him to absolve me of any of that responsibility and to make that one decision by himself and to have just enough time to make it with conviction so that when I came back, he asked everyone to leave the room and just said, Janet, I love you and I'll always love you and I'll always be with you, but I have to go now. And I'm going. I have to. Not saying I'm sorry, honey, not apologizing, not hoping, not with any kind of, I hope you understand even. Certainly not asking, or saying I think I have to, as in eliciting what do I think. It was just I have to, with a lot of conviction. not even, so that it, no matter what I said, would make any difference. Whether I begged him not to, or if I, which I did, just said, I know you have to do what you have to do. The thing is, though, I talking to the doctors, they all said, well, there'll be a couple of hours at least. His vital signs will change, and he said that and just prayed and turned his head away from me and then started breathing heavy and having respiratory rest, and he was gone in about 10 minutes after that, from the minute he stopped talking to me. He meant it. He meant it then, and he was going now. He said, 2 years is long enough. It's too much pain, and I just don't want to fight it anymore. I can't. I'm tired. I'm ready to go, and I want to go. And that's kind of how I felt afterwards. And am still feeling a little bit of that sense of relief. I got the release too when he said that. He was released from it all. It was finally over. All the pain and all the suffering and all the heartache, and it was over for him. He was tired. And that's kind of how I felt. It's just over. And I haven't gotten to the point yet where I'm really where it's really, really hard and hurting and suffering. Last weekend was not good. My mother had come to stay and was going to stay, was supposed to have stayed till yesterday, and last Friday it suddenly hit me. I hadn't been alone since he died, and I got really blew up and took it out on her, and that's what she was so wonderful. Mothers are for. But asked her to leave, and that I just needed to be alone in mine and Ed's house to try and absorb some of it. And I really broke down for 2 days and screamed and moaned and mourned and grieved and just got really sick and ill. And so I finally was able to release some of it, but it just kind of comes and goes. I'm still feeling, I think because I haven't really truly understood and accepted that he is not coming back, and he is gone, and he died. When I can accept that, I think I'll grieve a little more, probably.
What was the funeral like? What service did you plan or he plan?
He wanted it simple. He planned everything. The guy at the funeral home told it's a friend of mine's family owns a funeral home, and he told my mother it's the first time he's ever had someone go in to pick out a casket and say, well, I think this one, but I need to talk it over with him. That was a little shocking to him, but he picked out the suit he wanted to wear, and down to the underwear he was going to wear, slacks and everything. And at the service, he had, long before, he has a very close friend that's a priest. He's not a practicing Catholic and hasn't been since he was a child, but this just a personal, close friend that just happens to be a priest. And he had long ago asked him to talk at the services. And what was important to him was that Reikio talk and kind of talk about Ed's philosophy about life, kind of, and talk a little bit about his commitment and love for me. And it was very important to him that my brother sing at his services. In fact, about 4 days before he died, my brother walked in the room and he said, well, now, did you get Scott his assignment? And Scott just kind of looked, and I said, well, yeah, I asked him if he would sing at services. And Scott said, well, do you have any requests? And Edward was, I mean, he looked so bad. He just says, well, I just think we should keep it something upbeat, like lipstick on your collar or something. So he started singing Lipstick on Your Collar. And said, come on, sing, come on, can you get the beat, Scott? Tried to get Scott. So then he finally just said no. Just, he wanted Scott to pick it out, something that he would enjoy listening to. Because he liked listening to my brother sing.
What did Scott choose?
The Old Rugged Cross. I actually chose them. And The Old Rugged Cross and You'll Never Walk Alone. Just,
What was the meaning of You'll Never Walk Alone?
honestly, the meaning is very personal for me and for my brother. Our older brother that died, that was his favorite song. And we didn't know that till after he died. And we wished it had been sung at his services. And Ed liked it. So that was why. And it was a simple service, very simple.
Is there anything, that, did you derive any particular strength from family or friends, his family, his mother? Or?
His mother was pretty damn terrific. She has been all along, but she was really wonderful. Just so wanting to be there, and as much as possible, she completely took off work indefinitely like I did. And any second that we had definitely decided between the two of us, because of some of the things that was done. I got very angry. This is one of the things I got upset about and went and talked to Dr. Wyman about. Just a matter of people not reading the charts, for God's sakes, know what's going on. One night the nurse came in. Here he had just a tube hanging out of him. That's what they had decided. That's all the surgeon did was put a tube in, so at least to relieve the pressure. Could not cut anything out. Could not remove the obstruction. Nothing. But just so that the intestines hopefully would not rupture, just to relieve it. And in comes this nurse with ready to give him his stool softener and Metamucil. And I questioned it and questioned it and questioned it, and she said, well, it was signed off. I think the previous nurse had been giving it. And I said, luckily his mother was still sitting there, and I said, I don't think so. His mother and I have been here the whole time, and they're not giving him that. Why would they give him that? He is not passing anything. You don't, the tube's this big. You don't give him, why? I don't think so, and he's not taking anything in but clear liquids. So, sure enough, Dr. Wyman got a little concerned about that. It could have really caused some problems. And so that was the moment that I absolutely decided there would be no second that either his mother or I were not there. And she was just terrific, being constantly trying to give us as much time as possible, but being on call and being there at your fingertips if you needed her, and just really supportive and wonderful. And Ed was really terrific. We've always been so private and alone into ourselves that he was saying and so many things to me and talking to me, and at one point, I guess, he died on Tuesday, I guess on Sunday, or Saturday night, Sunday night when his mom left, he looked at me and said, how's she doing? I said, it's hard. And so I said, why don't you talk to her like you do me? Ask her how she's doing, and maybe you can help her a little bit. And he did the next morning. And I think it really helped her and made a difference. But it was just something that he wasn't used to doing with anyone else but me, and so I'm glad that got to happen too.
Did they get closer at the time of his death?
Oh, but they always were very close. But yes, definitely closer.
In a way that wouldn't have occurred, do you think, if he had not had the illness?
No. Well, sure. I mean, yeah, but they were always close. I think he allowed her to be closer, yes, because of the illness. Than she has always adored him and would be as close as he would possibly let her. And he was letting her be closer, yes. Allowing her to take care of him, kind of, and be with him.
What about your family and friends? Were they of any particular support?
My brother was. He came up and was with me the whole time, and he was with us in the room when Ed died too, and was there pretty constantly. We've always been close, and he's always been helpful. And I just have a very dear friend at work. What really helped a lot in just supportive in that he's the one, that it was his family that owns the funeral home, and he's just business-wise just taken over and really helped me out and taken care of a lot of things and everything. And so I didn't really need and want emotional support from anyone. That's the best kind of support anyone can give. The kind of thing where there's so many people saying, anything you need, really, honestly, if I can do anything for you. He was the kind that said, why don't I do this for you? I mean, who can think of things that I want done at that time? So that's a nice kind of friend. I said, well, you can, it got to the point where I said, Daddy's house is still here. And I wonder if that's important, because I wonder if he might be thinking, I don't know what goes on in a 5-year-old's mind, but if there's that element of him thinking his mother's just telling him that. And that if he could actually come back to his daddy's house and see that his grandparents are still here and I'm here, and I said that to him on the phone, we're all still here, and Daddy's left lots of things for you here in the house, and to come back to his house and see that it's all still there, and it's not just his mother saying, and that we could tell him to, and we could talk, and we could share all the things that his daddy wanted him to have, and I don't know.
I work primarily with children. I would take a bit stronger position in your life. I think that as concrete as you can make the experience for a 5-year-old, the better. That it's a relief for them to have things specific and visible and externalized.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he has the entire burden of working it through in his mind by himself. And then everything you described would be enormously helpful for him to go through. Primarily, as Drew says, because your attitude is one of supporting him while allowing him to face reality. And it probably isn't real for him yet either. And you're several times older, and you had every advantage of seeing the actual moment of death, and he hasn't had those advantages.
Yeah.
So I think it probably would be helpful if he wants to do it.
Oh, he wants to. It's his ex-wife that's just, doesn't think that'd be good right now. And she's just not accepting it and dealing with it at all anyway herself.
I think perhaps he's trying to separate himself from her experience so that he can have a separate experience from his mother, which is hard to do at that age.
I mean, I didn't mean to imply she's really being very good with him, of talking a lot about his daddy. But I think to really understand that his daddy's gone, because one of the things she's doing is showing pictures and watching tapes and stuff, and almost to me that with to a 5-year-old, that's almost pushing that he's still there more than that he's. There's got to be a happy medium of, yes, his presence is still here, and we'll always remember Daddy, but he's gone. And I don't. Well, she's letting him say prayers to him at night, mention him in his prayers, and talk to him. And I don't know. I don't know if she's doing the right things, and I think she is concerned.
What does Ed want him to have?
Mainly all of his medals from Vietnam. All except he has this beautiful cherrywood box that he's this was the one thing that a long time ago, almost a year ago, he sat down with me and very seriously told me that he wanted Ryan to have these when he was about 9 or 10, and he went through and explained what they all were to me. And then he says when they came over the other night, I decided that his mother should give it to him. And when his mother and sister came over the other night, his sister looked in it and said, "Well, where's his Purple Hearts?" And I said, "Well, he was real funny about that," because I asked him about that too. So, well, I just naively said, "Well, where are your Purple Hearts?" And he just got real funny about it. He's always gotten real funny about it. Finally, I said, "Why are you so funny about it? What is?" And he said, "Well, just when you're in Vietnam or when they were there, getting a Purple Heart was almost embarrassing. I mean, it was something that you just don't talk about, and it's not a medal you're proud of. Bottom line, it's not a medal you're proud of." And so I said, "Well, where is it anyway?" He says, "Well, it's in the chest. We can't find them at all." I almost think he threw them away. Which I don't know why he'd do that. That's weird.
What does he want a cherry box done
Just the medals are in the box, and just give Brian the whole box.
Or
With
the whole box with the medals in?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting.
Do you have any religious faith? Did that play any role in your resolution of his death? It's premature.
Absolutely. I really think it's very positive, as opposed to when my brother died, I went through a very bad period of negative, and they're hating God. And there is no God, but then going back to accepting, because I firmly believe there is, but hating him. Oh, and very negative. Everything was negative. Now instead, in fact, that's where my frustration comes. Everything, when I think about God, I attribute to him only everything positive that's happening, giving us those last 5 days, giving us what time we did have, just giving me Ed and making me okay, and having Ed do all the things he did to make me okay, and anything good that's happened. And so what makes it bad is I don't have anyone to get angry with and frustrated with on the things that are starting to surface that I'm getting angry about. So I'm taking him out on ignorant, not on, and I can't, there's not even individuals I can take it out on. I'm just angry at the fact that somebody's not educating them, and they're not getting, and people aren't, and I'm angry that there are going to be people out there that are going to suffer just because someone's not going to tell them something because they don't know, and knowing this exists, there's no one to be angry at, and it's hard. I want someone. It was almost easier when I was 16 and could get angry at God, but not once.
Do you think any of the anger you may feel toward God or life as it is being displaced to the physicians that?
I don't think so.
You think you can accept life, even though for you life has meant that you're a widow by 29 and you've lost a brother when he was 21, and you were like 16 or so, and in your first marriage didn't go well. I mean, you've known a lot of, you've had your share, as the expression goes.
But he's always made me okay afterwards. I've always come out on top. Always been lucky. Closer family because of my brother's death. Finding Ed because of my bad marriage. And nothing can make, our relationship was just so beautiful and so perfect that I couldn't possibly get angry at God or life for it being over, because just the good outweighs the bad just too much. Oh, I got angry the other night trying to find what could I get angry at, and it was just, I was angry at just cancer. You know, that this thing grew in his body, and damn it, why his body? Why did it pick it? Why did that happen in there? And that's too bad. You know, but it's not really at life. I don't feel badly about life because it was so good with him, with us.
If you had your chance, and I mean, you've known 2 years of pain and agony relevant to Ed's slow and painful death, if it could have been another way, that Ed would have been killed in a car accident or had a heart attack, would have you preferred that?
Oh, no.
Why not?
Oh, I feel a little guilty saying that. Because that's unfair to him. Because had that happened, he wouldn't have had the pain and the suffering he had. So maybe that's not fair for me to say that, but no, because I know what it's like to lose someone sudden death, even if it was just a brother as opposed to a husband. And the difference, very hard and a lot of heartache knowing it was going to happen, but at least getting the chance to say everything and make the most of every second. And for every second to be so incredibly emotion-packed and so loving. We would have just gone along and taken life for granted, and then suddenly, he'd have been gone. And no, it would have been much worse. Much worse. Sudden death. He wouldn't say that, though. Bless his heart. I feel guilty saying that. It's purely selfish.
What's your feeling? That's the most important thing I'm trying to understand. How you would feel.
Janet, you remember we talked on the phone one night, it was Tuesday night, late at night. Among the other things, the various things we talked about was Ed's experience with videotaping and your experience of his relationship to that. Would you mind sort of saying that?
You have to remind me, I'm sorry, I can't.
Well, you said, what you said was extremely helpful to me in pointing out that the demand that the videotape made to talk and to express himself to an outside group of people meant that he said certain things or took certain positions or presented himself a certain way that he might not have done otherwise.
It probably just wouldn't have surfaced, and he wouldn't have verbalized otherwise, and he wouldn't have acknowledged. And okay, in retrospect, I think has been tremendously helpful in understanding and dealing with it all, because it had its after effects after taping of the continuing of the communication. I think it probably, I don't know, we communicated so much anyway, but even for us, I think it probably made us communicate even more than we would have. I know it made him communicate more with his mother and other family members than he would have. And I think it helped a lot of people because of that.
Do you think there was ever a time in which the context sort of tempted him, or he chose to take a position or an attitude or present himself a certain way that he might not have, that he developed an image of himself for presentation in the videotape that was in any way different or separate that he might have, than was his real self, or that he might have done otherwise?
Interesting. I started to say no, but then maybe just a little bit of presenting himself as being a little bit stronger than he might, being this having the strength that he'd like to have, but maybe didn't sometimes really have. And yet, it's the kind of thing when you talk about it and you put on the strength, it becomes you a little bit more. So I think then it did give him some of the strength that he wanted, but just to look like he was being positive, he was being strong, he was being optimistic, he was being, which maybe he wasn't feeling quite as much, but would make for a dull tape if he wasn't, or a depressing tape, you know, and so that would, it'd be like convincing yourself, when you're trying to convince someone else and you do a good job of convincing yourself. I think that helped some. That's interesting.
Do you think there is a way that we could have used the videotape more effectively to communicate with the staff that, you're talking about the staff needing education?
No. I don't know. I honestly, that's why I wanted to talk to Dr. Goldberg. I want to know what the answer is. I mean, is there some kind of foundation or fellowship that we can contribute to? I want to find out that deals in that area of pain control and you know, researching that and promoting it, getting literature out on it and educating doctors in it, any kind of caregivers, any kind of nurses, everybody. I mean, our little videotaping couldn't have done that, I don't think. I just have, that's the only, I started to say regret, but it's not my regret. But that he just didn't go to Dr. Goldberg earlier. There could have been at least 2 months better.
And you feel it was the referral process that failed to get him to Dr. Goldberg?
Yes. Yes, because when he was finally referred to Dr. Goldberg, like I said, it was strictly because, well, it's finally they had implied to add that first time Dr. Goldberg was ever mentioned was that a psychiatrist to see, you know, because we really can't figure out why you're having this pain and why the pain medication isn't working, putting a real guilt trip in his head. And so finally he did. He reached that point and said, you're right, something is wrong with me in my head, in my mind, something is wrong with me that I'm not getting pain relief. Yes, send me to a psychiatrist, anything. So they sent him for all the wrong reasons.
But what you wish, in some ways, was that you hadn't had to have the experience of being sent to a, quote, psychiatrist, but could have gotten the pain medication.
From them, or at least sent them to him as someone who works with pain control. Not someone that works with patients because they're not getting relief from pain, and they should be. Because we're doing everything that's supposed to be done. No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. You know, looking at him more as a medical pharmacologist, you know, I mean, as to drug levels and whatever, sending him to someone, a specialist like that, instead of referring him to him as a psychiatrist. And that's what the referral was. And that's not what it turned out to be.
It's a very important distinction, which is, I quite agree with you.
You know, are there just not enough people doing anything in that area? Or what? Do you know if there are?
Well, pain control as a specialty, you know, has just recently evolved, in which people really have looked at that as such, and it's usually found in hospitals that have very large psychiatry departments, and that is that it's seen, ironically, as a luxury as opposed to a necessity. And the aspect of pain and the other subspecialties, it's just one of those things that fall in between because it's it's not seen clearly as cancer alone or heart attacks alone or orthopedics alone. So it's not a thing that's We're actually developing a pain clinic as such here.
Yeah.
And it's an
And they
interaction.
want to, and Roger Williams too, I think everyone recognizes the need.
Well, when I asked that of Dr. Goldberg, why aren't you at least, or someone like you going out on the lecture circuit or something, I'll go out on the lecture circuit for you. And anyway, he said that it's happening slowly, that in fact he just used an example that he'd gotten a call from a resident or an intern or something over at Roger Williams just the other day saying he'd heard one of his lectures and there's a patient that's having a lot of pain and he just doesn't feel like they're doing the right things for him, and asking for referral. And but God, it's so slow, and I just feel so incredibly lucky. But then I hurt for other people that aren't going to get the chance, that aren't going to be the lucky ones like Ed and I were.
What, if you can think back to, what are the things that you wish had been said to Ed? Let's say the oncologist cannot or does not have the expertise to supply really finely tuned pain control. It works with 80% of the patients, doesn't work with 20%. And they need someone, a psychopharmacologist. How would you say that to someone like Ed, so that the association with psychiatry and the implications and so on were not aroused, but the recognition that I, as your oncologist, no longer have the expertise to help you?
Just say that. And there is someone.
There is someone who can help you.
There is someone that deals in the area of pain control. Is an expert in the area of pain control and can work with you better on trying to find something. And that's the whole thing. That is not how Dr. Goldberg was presented at all. And I don't think that's what Dr. Wyman thought of him as. I honestly don't. I think he does now. I don't think he did. For one thing, I don't know if he'd ever referred anyone to Dr. Goldberg before. I don't think he had. And I don't know if anyone from Roger Williams had. I wonder, I question now, if we were the first. And I got very angry at one of the oncology nurses because during that stay, that next to the last stay too, at one point she was talking to me and saying, well, it was, because I was saying something about if they weren't making him comfortable, and that was our whole concern, and I said they would just consult with Dr. Goldberg well. And then getting off on Dr. Goldberg, and she was saying, well, Ed just wasn't getting relief from pain medication, so that's why he was referred to Dr. Goldberg. Because he needed somebody else to help him figure out why. So she was still under that impression that he went there to get his head cleared up. And when I said, but that's not what Dr. Goldberg's done for him. All he has done is work with pain medication. And she said, but he really has sessions and talks with Ed. And I said, no, he doesn't. Ed goes in, Ed says, here's the pain. Sometimes often he doesn't even go in. He calls. All Dr. Goldberg has done for him is play with his levels of pain medication, period. She made me so angry because she still was like, oh, sure. That's ignorant. And I didn't need that